proceedings are beginning with a set of 5 readings organized by Willa Schneeberg, who will introduce the poets. The rules are pretty much the same for this set of 5 readings as for the rest of the open mic, which is that each person has up to 5 minutes, and except for the first 5, who are given 2 short poems each person will have 1 poem or 5 minutes, whichever is longer. Shorter. Yes. I've been treated to some wine before. Well, let me introduce Will. She will introduce everybody else.
This is actually cozier, and because my parents are both hard of hearing, I think you have no trouble hearing me. Am I right? Yes. Right. I can be pretty loud when it's necessary. The projection is not a problem. So, we're here to celebrate the new Pacific Northwest anthology called Alive at the Center. Some of you may know about it already, and what's interesting about it is as you know, there's much celebration of the natural world in our part of the country, but not quite as much about the city. So this is emphasizing the city. Of course, there are poems about the natural world as well. And so it's Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver, BC, which is kind of nice. We've gone across country borders as well. And so this is the anthology in its totality. And this is just the Portland one. So what they did, which I think is really interesting, and we have it for sale, in the bookstore, is that they made individual anthologies for each city, as well as the full length from the 3 cities. So I thought, since we are, obviously folks have come from places beyond Oregon, but what I have to say is the main one, and then the Portland. So how we're going to do it is Leah Stenson, who was one of the editors for the Portland anthology, will talk a little bit about the process, and then the rest of, we have about 5 people who are in the anthology who are going to also read, and I'll just call them up to read. There's something like, at least I know, in the Portland anthology, something like 30 poets, so you can see you're only getting a very tiny sampling of the people who are in the anthology. So I hope that there'll be many readings for us to share this. So, thank you. Thank you so much for organizing this reading. Just wanted to ask, does everyone here know of Hooligan Press? Maybe the people in Portland do, but there may be some people in outlying areas who are not aware. Hooligan, are you all completely current with everything you've all heard of? No, haven't. Okay, so Hooligan is actually a press that's affiliated with Portland State University. The students actually run the press, and this project was put together by Hooligan Press, Alive at the Center. And actually, there's a poet who usually comes to the Concord by the name of John Sibley Williams, and I'm a firm believer in giving credit when credit is due. At that, 2 years ago, well, actually in 2011, he was the assistant acquisitions editor at Hooligan Press, and it's affiliated with the MFA program in publishing there at PSU. And John came up with this idea, well, why don't we do an anthology that, extends beyond Portland to ultimately another country, to Vancouver, to the whole Pacific Northwest area. So he floated that idea to Hooligan, and the rest of the staff all agreed it was a worthwhile project, and the rest is history. 2 years later, in April of this year, the book was published. I was asked 2 years ago by John, because he was coming to the poetry readings that I host in Portland, whether I'd be willing to be an editor. And what an honor. I was delighted. So in Portland, it was Susan Denning from Literary Arts, Jesse Lichtenstein, and myself. And Jesse and I were kind of like worker bees. You know, we got lots of poems. We sent about 45 poems each to Susan, who submitted her own poems and ultimately made the final decisions about what went into the Portland section. So if you're unhappy that you're not in there, talk to Susan. No. But Susan was very gracious, and she said also that we as editors should submit our own work. And I felt kind of okay because I wasn't making the final decision. So my poem actually got in there too, thanks to Susan. So it was a wonderful undertaking because it really expanded, you know, my horizons as to the talent that we have in Portland, connected me with a lot of people, and it's connecting our Portland with other areas. And I have to say, it's not a perfect book, because it was done by students. And that was a changing staff of students over 2 years. Some of these people graduated from the program. Some of them, you know, were there one semester, and there was a new person in their place the next semester. Even the advisors for the program changed. So there are a couple of glitches here and there. We've heard about them from some of the poets. But really, you know, I think that this book is fabulous, that these students did a great job, and the point of the book was not to glorify the old gray hairs, but to give these young people a chance to show their talent and to develop and grow. So from my point of view, this is a stunning success. So, I'm sorry, I'm so feisty about it. So I'd like to read my poem. And actually, everyone who's reading today, I'm happy to say, was somebody I suggested as being included in the book. So I really feel happy that you're all here, and we'll all be sharing this reading today. I'm going to read my poem, Night Train, and then I'm going to read a poem by one of my favorite poets in Portland. Actually, I didn't solicit his work. I think Jesse did, and it's Carl Adamshick's poem, Our Flag. He's one of the finest young poets in Portland today. So I'll begin with Night Train. Daylight surrenders to interior reflections in a mottled collage on the coach window. My twin gazes back, flickering as we race through the fading Van Gogh landscape. Picking up speed, we hurtle headlong just above the track, verging on derailment. We slam into darkness, plunged into silence. I tunnel through granite, pray for starlight. And Our Flag by Carl Adamshick. Our flag should be green to represent an ocean. It should have 2 stars in the first anton for us and navigation. They should be of gold thread, placed diagonally and not solid, but comprised of lines. Our flag should be silky jet. It should have a wound, a red river the sun must ford when flown at half-mast. It should have the first letter of every alphabet ever. When folded into a triangle, an embroidered 8th note should rest on top of an odd pinnate, with an argentine stem, a fiery leaf, a small branch signifying the impossible song. Or maybe honey and blue with a centered white pinion. Our flag should be a veil that makes the night weep when it comes to dance, a birthday present we open upon death, the abyss we sleep under. Our flag should hold failure like light glinting in a headdress of water. It should hold the moon as the severed head of a white animal, and we should carry it to hospitals and funerals, to police stations and law offices. It should be live, divided, deepening its yellows and reds, flaunting itself in the dead gray afternoon sky. Our flag should be seen at weddings, well after we've departed. It should stir in the heat above the tables and music. It should watch our friends join and separate and laugh as they go out under the cloudy night for cold air and cigarettes. Our flag should sing when we cannot, praise when we cannot, rejoice when we cannot. Let it be a reminder, let it be the aperture, the net, the rope of dark stars. Let it be mathematics, Let it be the eloquence of the process shining on the page, a beacon on the edge of a continent. Let its warnings be dismissed. Let it be insignificant, and let its insignificance shine. Carl Adams.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here. This is a beautiful book. I have a couple disclaimers. Normally this is happy hour for me. You may have seen me in a professional capacity earlier. I can't guarantee that. One small note about anthologies. I'll tell you the truth. Historical detail. Late 1860s. The American Garland of Poetry. Very important anthology that published the best poems in America after the Civil War. Emily Dickinson has no poems in any of these, ever. Okay, Peter Sears, good friend, late nap. I take a long hot tub so that I can feel like a melon. I dry myself off and tingle like a coral reef. The lower sheet I pull up tight. I puff the pillows, lie on my back, stretch out my arms and legs. If I'm lucky, a breeze sweeps in sweet as silk. The sleep is calm, like a coin at the bottom of an old fortress wall that protrudes into the sea. And the coin is almost green from the slow sloshing. In the sleep, nobody comes after me. I don't have to go anywhere. I'm immortal. I love Peter. He's going through a lot right now. And man's writing poems. Always writing poems. Thanks for doing this. This is a really nice event. You have a beautiful venue. The sun just comes through here. I feel like I'm at Stonehenge or something. It's kind of the way this is. My pharmacist is here. Give me an advice over the counter sometimes. Don't need to pay for a doctor. I ask my pharmacist, seriously, like, if I'm doing like a little weird thing, he'll like talk to my pharmacist. I like that. I don't know if that's legal, but I think that's so helpful. It's like little things. This is my poem here, Paper Mill. I told you, thanks for coming, many of you earlier. I love Oregon City. I love that crazy falls. And all the amazing industry around it. We fish there, and my friends and I often catch. I mean, there are salmon and sturgeon. There are 10-foot sturgeon swimming in that basin. I witnessed them at the basin. The great falls of, Portland environment. No one even thinks about something. Below the basalt bluffs of Oregon City, a steampunk circus of riveted acid skulls, spider welded to the great skeleton of industry, rattling hoppers, cabled stage stacks, iron steps up to the corrugated shack where the pipe fitters have coffee before tightening a clamp on chip line number 2. God knows I use a lot of paper, but there's something about a rusty red elbow wrapped like a wound that makes me shiver back over the highway up to the faded blue Quonset of the American Legion's post number 5, where Gus buys us beers. World's first paper mill was in Baghdad, Gus tells me. I'll be damned, another man says. If we could give up paper and oil, we'd be all right. We talk jobs and fishing and how the old town is hanging on. The young bartender with the prosthetic arm says I should go upriver to Clackamas Park and see those lampreys along the rocks. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou, for organizing this event. And I have to say that the way that happy hour has affected me is that I think I have a psychic connection to Henry Hughes. Since I was intending to read Peter Sears' poem too. But that's okay, there's a lot of poems in this book. And I'm going to read one by another good friend of mine who, I'm not sure I can do justice to it because he's very funny. I'm going to read John Morrison's poem, which I love. It's called, and I'm going to read it because he talks about souls, and my own poem, which is in here, also talks about souls. So I'm going to read John Morrison's poem first. It's called The Uncles. A haunted, though thoroughly logical child, I reasoned that, yes, ghosts could terrify me, but should one take a swipe with fist or bloody chain, the ethereal blow would just swish through my face. But the devil, Lucifer himself, roasted to a dark crimson in the fires, his two horns like thorns of a huge rose, he frightened me down to my groin. I hated everyone completely. Sins stained me, stuck to my fingers and palms like pine pitch. There were not enough decades of joyful or sorrowful mysteries to see me clear of damnation, an eternal pressure cooker, not for rattling jars of sweet summer peaches, but for my bones and those of the equally luckless dead, locked forever in the royal of flame. To banish the devil, one must banish God too, a quid pro quo that began my long loneliness outside the company of angels and saints. The day I held open the secret back door of my soul and said, "You too must go." Silent they stood, up from their tea in the kitchen nook, and walked past me like two severe yet frail uncles, each with a hitch in the step, both disgusted and shamed, back into the pagan forest. One a whiff of mushroom, one a brush of morning breeze. Very cool. Thank John Morrison for writing that. And here's my poem from the book. This one is called Souls Underwater. That's souls, S-O-U-L-S. It has nothing to do with feet. Souls underwater. No longer tumbled by currents, as when long ago they were lodgers in frail bodies. Now they drift free of the flesh that was sucked and nibbled from bones, and the blood that swirled away, its quick red streaking the deeps. Souls mingle in the democracy of weed, passing through great barnacled bulkheads, once passengers, transparent without furs or jewels, glide through the shiver that marks the presence of stoker or convict, or the drunken oilman who one night staggered to the edge of the spider-legged rig and, dreaming of his girlfriend, unusually tender in his mind at that moment, plunged through cans and plastic trash into the arms of another. "Welcome," said the souls, though his ears heard nothing. No longer sailors nor slaves, still they remember the struck bell piercing sleep, the darkness below decks where rats splashed in the bilges, the wide-eyed newborn who flew over the deck rail, saved from the plantation by her mother's arm. Oceans are thick with them, submariners floating free of their vaults, and pilots whose planes dropped from the sky like giant guillemots, but failed to surface with a catch of fish. The careless were snatched by sneaker waves, the joyful by cruising sharks who dispatched them with a lunge and spat out their splintered surfboards. Some are surprised to find themselves here, having thought they'd ascend to the heaven of upper airs or deep star space. But these are the heavens, say the souls, the heavens below. Thank you.
Shot.
Give back to Willa afterwards.
Oh, it's Willa's, okay.
It's not mine.
Okay, one of my favorite Portland poets who is very self-effacing, and we don't hear much about him, is Paul Merchant. And you can tell this was done by college students because the print is small enough that I need to put on my reading glasses. This is Paul's poem, Tantalus. The simplicity of the torture was what always astonished him. The receding lake of nakedness, crispness of forbidden fruit, immortal, nourished on air, only his senses starved, teeth in the apple, hands in the clear water. The final humiliation. He envied Sisyphus, his boulder to lean on, a sense of purpose. This has absolutely nothing to do with Portland. I don't know why it was chosen. My mother spent several years dying in New York while I commuted back and forth. I am pregnant with my mother's death. I grow great with her decline. When shall I be delivered? I'll be there tomorrow, I say on the phone. She's amazed when I arrive. Have you met my aide? She asks politely. The same kind aide she's had for months. She remembers to worry. Do you need more blankets? Her radio loud in the airless house, the oxygen machine humming and spitting as she curls on a waterproof pad. Oh, she moans in her sleep. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. I love you. Oh. I wake her. A gradual smile blooms. I'm embarrassed, she laughs, to be such a bag of bones. Her shrunken skeleton kicks at my heart and inside my belly. I am the luckiest woman in the world, she tells me again. I'm the luckiest woman in the world. Or else she says, I'm the loveliest woman in the world, and doesn't notice any difference. She touches my cheek. This is something new in our shared lives, how she turns so gentle. I labor hard with her. Forgiveness loosens my stubborn bones. I am swollen with her love for me. When shall I be delivered? Okay, thank you.
That's the one I had.
Yes?
Come upstairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll put it back upstairs. What? I said I'll put it back upstairs. So I'm the last reader from this, and then we're going to continue with the open mic. And the one question I had, and maybe Leah knows, is this, all the page numbers are 0 and then the number. What's
I don't know why
that?
they did it.
So I was wondering, is that like a typo?
We just turned the poems over to the students, and we had no say
So it's kind of an
or
interesting-
oversight after that. So we have no
Interesting
idea.
design element, so 0 3 And as far as what Penelope was saying, as far as I know, the only
the issue. You had to live in Portland. You had to live in Seattle, that's it. Or in the environment, you know, in the environment. So that was basically the deal, not
Have a presence.
not subject matter. The subject matter was not.
But we preferred a little edgier and not really nature poetry because that's been done. And Hooligan already did Deer Drink the Moon a number of years before, which was more the natural setting. We wanted something a little more urban and edgy. And by that qualification, Penelope's poems are.
I'm going to read my poem now. I'm going to end with a poem by Crystal Williams, who teaches at Reed College, and many of you know that Portland is not exactly well known for its relationship with diversity. We don't have many poets of color in this anthology, sadly. And the poem is called The Bells of St. Bavo Sing Scat. And when I'm referring to Harlem in this poem, it's not the one in New York, it's the one in Amsterdam, right by Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, okay. The Bells of St. Bavo Sing Scat. Anticipating the lovers who will soon be voices with bodies again, the comforter on the bed fills with light, the color of sky when day puts up her feet and slips on royal blue slippers. Outside their window, the man on the roof dangles a dancing bear or a baby grand, or whatever the lovers want to unhook and haul inside. Finally, their bodies are fields of yellow tulips fringed purple, slowly opening their fists. The bells of St. Bavo singing scat, fire-breathing dragons barreling out of children's books to race through the streets of Harlem. Belts daddies use for beatings stay in the loops of their pants. Charred bodies resurrect themselves, noticing a faint smell of smoke in their sleek hair or the tweed of their jackets, while lovers who parted without declaring their love feverishly lick stamps on envelopes of yellowed love letters or claw at blood-red wax seals. And this poem by Crystal Williams is called Enlightenment. Detroit, Michigan. She is merging onto the Etzel Ford Freeway in a car no longer made, in a city that no longer makes it, talking on her cellular phone, slouched to the left, fingernails purple and red and caging the wheel, head cocked and foot heavy. In pursuit of a race car, she has bought a roll of black duct tape, has rolled 3 racing stripes down the sedan's hood, as if she has been whispering with Buddha. And he said, "Sister, relinquish your resistance, your discomfort, forsake your ego," which she has done, which is what it means to want but not have in a city stacked with desire. To know that desire is our most ruinous trait. The moment in the morning when you decide to be unsatisfied and unhappy. Our want is just one of many in a line of wants. And the line of wants is ancillary to the line of needs. People close to you are hungry, and you have ignored it. People close to you have lost their jobs. Today, somebody's mother has died. Today, somebody's child has been murdered. Today, somebody lost sight. And your lumina runs well. Luminosity, woman. No one is coming to save you. there is nothing from which to be saved.
Well, thank you, Willa, and the others. We're now going to branch into the regular open mic, to which there was a sign-up list, which is nowhere to be found. So, what I propose is that I act as MC, so to speak, and you volunteer. If more than one hand goes up at a time, I'll make a choice. And while you gather your thoughts and decide whether you want to speak or read early or late, I'll read my own poem. Strategy. It's a short poem. Strategy. In a crowd, unlikely to be singled out, yet vulnerable to mass movements or epidemic, we are not safe. Standing alone, exposed on all sides, not safe either. So, if I cling to you, have I shared the danger? Or have I doubled my exposure? At least we warm each other. Neil Lemery, some of you I don't. Good. Please come up.
Here's a
One
piece
poem.
of paper, we can start a list. We can start a list. We can start a list. We're going to do this. Yeah. Start a list.
Maybe we remember where we were on the list?
Yes.
Remember.
Okay. All right. I will say.
So I'm going to ask my wife to go next, because she's next on the list. On Wednesday nights, I go out to a local prison in my community, and I have coffee and play cards with several young men, and several other guys in the community too. And last Wednesday, I was visiting with a man that I don't normally mentor, but I mentioned the fact that I was going to be here this weekend, and he said, "Oh, I've written a poem, it's great. And I really like it, and I've been spending some time on it." And he showed it to his mentor, and then they shared it with me. And so I told him I'd be here tonight to read it for him. He was 14 when he committed his crime, and when he was 16 he was arrested and convicted, and he's serving a 7-year sentence. And it's a Measure 11 offense. If you know what that means, is that there's no good time, there's no possibility of early release. He's going to serve 7 full years in prison. A couple months ago, he invited me to come to his birthday party. And we had a great time. We had ice cream, cake, and presents. He sang a few songs and told stories. And it was his first birthday party he'd ever had in his life. He's 20 years old. So this is The Friends We Make by Vincent Moreno. I cannot put a price on this friendship we've made, and I wouldn't give it up. There's nothing I'd trade. You treat me as equal, as one of the crowd, even though I'm obnoxious and vocally loud. You accept me as I am, and you listen to me, even though I'm young and show immaturity. In the past, when people would drive me insane, you were the one there who helped me maintain. I just want you to know I cherish what you do, and the world could use more people like you.
I just want to add to that if any of you know of any poetry collections or any poets that these young men from age 13, 14 to 22 would benefit from reading, and many of them are Native Americans. Did you let me know that? futility. His back to the front door, he chooses not to look out any window, but straight ahead at the TV, where he watches cable news and weather all day, oblivious of what's happening right outside. She sighs more than once and turns up her own TV 2 levels louder, 10 feet away in the living room. The Seattle Mariners and her Ichi, or the NASCAR races and her Casey Conn. All day, weather and news and NASCAR and baseball, dueling earworms. Sometimes Chuck Norris reruns play on both TVs. Neither hears the phone nor the doorbell. "Oh, I didn't hear you drive up," she says to company. "You must have been quiet." But everyone letting themselves in slams the back door, and the brass bell tied around the knob jingles. He keeps staring at his TV even when he mutes it for visitors. He can't hear much anymore. She won't buy herself hearing aids because he refuses to wear his. He won't wear them because then he doesn't have to listen to her. He doesn't like the chair she bought him, so she won't buy the one he doesn't. If he looks outside, he will have to think about how he can't walk or drive or even wheel himself anymore. How he can only sit in the stiff-bottomed wheelchair, minus its footrests, and not even feel his nose run half the time. How no one talks to him anymore, so he folds up further and further into a C until his nose touches his knee. And his lungs refuse to work, so the oxygen kicks in and he's someplace else, oyster shucking, or worming a hook, or plowing down by the slough. How the garden plot sits there barren, topped with sun-sucked dry leaves, and desiccated clean peaches his grandson picked up off the lawn and pitched into a pile because not even the deer would eat them. How, if she dies first, he'll lie there, rot and starve before anyone notices. How what he wants waits in the shop, and he can't get there to the rifle and the bullets. She tells everyone she hates when he gasps for air, moving from chair to pod or chair to bed. He doesn't have to breathe like that, she says. She goes outside to smoke and feed the cats. Smoke and take out the trash. Smoke and get some fresh air. Every task ends in arsenic and tar. Her hopes curl up into ash and soot, swirl around the patio roof, and ride the wind. She thinks about her promise made when promising came easy, and the promise now, when keeping him at home means wiping the shit off his ass and sweeping his goddamn crumbs off the floor. She'd rather lie in bed mornings and read a book instead of laying down his medications before him, one by one, like boxcars on the train she'd like to hop right on out of here. She wants the same thing he does, all day long. Or when he yells her name at night. But she doesn't know where he hid the bullets.
If you could announce your name before you read.
Thank you. I am Diane Butler. I'm from California. So I don't know if I came through to anyone. Oregon is in my heart. I've lived in Gold Beach, Ashland, and Eugene. So my family and my business is in California, so there I go. I was raised on a farm. The first one that I'm going to read is
One poem.
what poem?
One
You
poem.
said 1 or 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll just read this one. Drops of bread for my father, Leslie. Running through a field of ochre wheat, I see Daddy driving the dusty green combine. My hair is burned blonde by the hot summer sun. He reaches down with grain-dusted arms, lifts me up to the massive machine, lets me ride in the metal bin behind him. Wheat fills around my skinny brown legs. The dust smells of toasted flour, new as a day, young as the child I am. Daddy drives to dump harvest when he discovered I'm trapped. With a billion fingers of grain grasping my body, claiming me for their own. He tugs in desperation, every farm accident rolling like a horror film through his mind. He has to flip the auger switch, a touch, a tap, to draw the half bushel before I twist into that sharpened screw. He yanks me once more, and I'm tugged free. But for my red shoes, tumbled like the chaff pulled along the blade. The harvester rumbles, grinding, dropping 1, 2, red spots onto the hill of gold. Daddy drives, Daddy retrieves the solemn evidence, examines the scarred souls. He walks toward me, slipping through the stubble, whispering, muttering. His hands are rough, his touch tender, as he rubs each of my dirty feet before slipping on those shoes and tying the laces tightly.
Please.
My name is Margaret Kirchner. I also was raised on a farm, and my daddy worked from long hours, and he was always my hero. So this is one of the first poems I've ever written, and it was about my father, entitled, My Father. On those hot summer days, when the sweat made mud pies from the dust on his face, my father drank his beer bottoms up and exhaled an that rippled out to his fields to satisfy the thirst of gophers and bull snakes, alfalfa stubbles and meadowlarks, and soothes my soul, world without end. Amen.
Yes. You.
I see a hand.
I'm Judith Montgomery. I'm not from Portland, I'm from Bend. And I thought I would read a poem with one of the more thank you, Tim. One of the more improbable titles, so I challenge anyone to an improbable title contest. Saint Colonoscopy. Where there is no bright blood to follow, I am blessed. Or not found out, not snipped by the black snake that slithers in, peering for apocalyptic growth within the slit recesses of my flesh. Not to be bleeding, not to be bled, blessing conferred by my surgeon, her kind eyes icy as God's, while she searches out fault in the garden. May no fruit bud within this winding vine. May the snake angel ever seek in vain.
Please. Next.
coming tonight and for the full day of workshops. I will not read I was thinking of a body part because we had workshops on that today, but since we just had one poem, I will go with the place. A sense of place. It's lovely to see you live at the center and to meet some of the people in the anthology. I was one of the editors of the Vancouver part, and I kind of really wanted to get the voices, the people who spoke their poems into the Vancouver air. So that was one of the beginnings of the selection of inviting poets, was who are the people we've heard in the last 2 years stand up and read in Vancouver, because we wanted to encourage that. We believe that if you write, you're going to have to stand up and read as well, and share your poems, which is what we're doing here today. I will read you a poem. Quick backstory, my friend and I would share our work. She's an artist, a potter, and a painter, and a poet. We'll get together for coffee. Once she was joined by this other woman, and I felt bad not sharing my poem with her, so I just kind of slipped it towards her. And she's like, no, don't bother me with poetry. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. And that could have been the end of the conversation. Then she turned to me and said, if you want me to read a poem, write me a poem with yogurt in it. And that could have been the end of the conversation. And I said, okay. And so here's the poem. I sent her. Crumbling into harmony. The day is full at the center. We meander through mountain passes, see cliff faces, nurture trees, and the rocky stream, our faithful companion. See crumbling houses in fallow fields, doors and windows, open to trees and meadows. A single wall stands more as an idea than enclosure, turns playground to goats and winds. This falling apart, it is slow. A chipped rock, some dust, the corner of a stone, a dropped word, and seeds take root in dried mud bricks. Listen. You can watch intently all day and still not see it, but the quiet will steal your ears and pull you in until the trees seem more a thought than a row of poplars in the distance. What is it we want from this long journey? We stop to eat at a roadside inn. A woman serves us mountain sheep yogurt with wild berries. She said so many people pass through, they ran out of strawberries. We were lucky. There was yogurt. She then said, nothing much happens here. Her heart placed somewhere else. On the road again, content. The moon is so full tonight, it does not sit still. It rolls on the top of hills, a round rustic loaf tossed in the sky. A ritual bread we follow to satiate our hunger. Yes, there are urgent questions, but nothing more urgent than right here, where the sheep sleep oblivious in their pens, where the next clay pot of milk is turning to yogurt in the quiet of the night.
I'm Tim Bolam from Eugene, Oregon, and I've got a poem that I consider an entertainment. I want to read another one that was more meditative, but this is in the vein that I do, so. It's called The Music Lessons. Two roosters walk into a club called the Blue Note, where the music mix is the edgy new and the tried and true too. Little Red murmurs to his mentor about scoring with the chicks, plans his move. Check out that handsome hen, sir, sipping something cool beside the bar, and watch me now. Little Red sidles over, and with a, hey mom, dig this, he lays it down. Cock-a-doodly oodly doo, flip flap and fly. The sky is so high, and cock-a-doodly oodly ooh 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 to you. Well, the hen regards him coolly, and before turning away, tells him he'd better catch the bus back to Peoria. Crestfallen, Little Red joins his mentor without a word to say, and Big Red says, I know, but now watch our master at work. He approaches a pretty pullet at a nearby table, smiles and sings, cock-a-doodle-doo. The hen is radiantly smitten, and as Big Red walks away with her, wing and wing, he gently calls over his shoulder to his protege, stick to the standards, kid.
Hi everybody, I'm C.S. Blue. I was going to do 4 love poems tonight, but being as we had the technical difficulties and got started late, I was going to do 3 love poems and 1 love lament. I'm just going to do the real short one. But I will do a shameless promotion for my new book, SOS, Songs of Sobriety, A Personal Journey of Recovery. It basically chronicles the first 10 years of recovery in verse. So, that's my new book. I'm going to do the love lament.
Steven,
Yes. Title?
Hi.
you let your voice drop.
Terry. Lemons on the tree that cause no one to pucker sit rotting in the rain on stormy Sunday. Well-worn flip-flops still carry your tired feet. As you move slowly through your no one to speak to world. Vague, infrequent memories of making love you would rather just be touched in all the aching places. Much kinder and safer than the risk of another breaking heart, long worn like a thick, tarry robe, but without the comfort or warmth or the ability to soak up the wetness of your lonely tears.
Who's next?
Hi, I'm Cindy McCain, and I live in Corvallis. This was an easy choice. It's the only one I happen to have with me. This is one that was the product of one of Henry Hugh's workshops.
Louder, please.
One of Henry Hugh's workshops. It's a shameless plug. I was not going to mention that, but I'll do it twice. All right. How many of you are familiar with flamenco? Yeah? Okay, now in a flamenco clap, there's 2 basic kinds. There's the open hand, and I want this side of the room to do the open hand clap. You do it by placing your hands like this. The other kind of flamenco clap has got a hollow pop to it, and you cup your hand just a little bit. All right, now do it with feeling next time. Now the thing with flamenco is that you have a tremendous amount of energy, but you need it all to fuel yourself. So in America, we clap. But if you're doing flamenco, you catch it at the end and you clasp your hands and you don't let any out for anybody else. So, one more time. Flat. Pop. Clasp at the end. Move again. All right, so this is flamenco workshop.
an hour and a half of baile, an hour and a half of palmas. I come in late, parking my mother's Oldsmobile by the barking dog. Flamenco upstairs in the back. Dark flame of woman. Bright skirt, vamp scarf. Her long-haired, graying gypsy husband to teach the rhythms. I put on my shoes, brave in the back row in my jeans. She asked the little girl sitting on their side, would she be dancing? You have a skirt on, you can dance. A simple buderia for parties. The steps, the arms, and the hips. Only for the ladies, you men just keep your arms up. Any questions? Next form. Eso es. Flamenco is yo soy. I am. I leave before the compas. The shoes are in the closet, in the corner by the tap shoes. I wonder about tango. I hear it is a dance of loves.
Okay, hi, so I wanted to get up before we lost more people because I also have a PSA, which is I am the librarian at Roosevelt High School, and Roosevelt got a large grant this year from State Farm to fund their publishing center, and they're working with Hooligan. So I didn't know I was going to do this PSA, but you reminded me that the students are now working on their second anthology, and they are soliciting poems on the subject of race and identity. I think there's a third, but I cannot remember it. So if you have poems that might be on the subject of race and identity, please either look up Roosevelt on the internet and send them to the Publishing Center, or get a card from me. The name of the student press is Unique Things. So I have been solicited to try to help with this process, and what better place? Roosevelt High School, I'm so sorry, Roosevelt High School in Portland. The arrogance. I'm so sorry. What am I talking about? Anyway, but I'm going to read my poem also, because I was never born in this. But I also got to say, this is like a wonderful open mic because it's so collegial. This is lovely. Okay. Following on flamenco, I've got the St. Petersburg, Florida Cigar Factory employs a reader, which is historical. The cigar factories had people in the factories reading to the workers. So, my first season, I heard Uncle Tom's Cabin, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and became an American, retelling at the dining table to mi madre y padre, my dark-haired hermano, in the hot belly of the factory, bent over my box of tobacco leaves, stacked and supple, fattening beneath my strong fingers, plump as the palms that swayed by the sea where we would swim on Sunday. El Lector, gifted with a drum-rung voice, rang in the news, perched on the tall stool in his white suit and Panama hat, filling us with tales, bearing us the new world as we worked to make it rich. Presentando, Song of Myself and the Belle Dame Sans Merci, Shakespeare's sonnets, the English a weapon with which I would win a wife, a woman proud to have a man who could roll off a word or more to secure her surrender, roses and candy, inferior tricks for wooing, less potent than the word's elixir, which seeded the garden where I would live with her. The Scarlet Letter and Walden. El Lector shook all our hands before he started, and when the sun was no longer high in the windows, as we packed away the layers of leaves and pushed our chairs under, we thanked him, singing a song or two that had carried us across the roiling waters, lullabies for him to present to his daughters. Betsy Fogelman-Todd from Roosevelt High School.
I once, well, actually, not just once, but this particular once, found a little yellow warbler on our deck, upside down, legs up. And I picked it up, and I was so sad because I didn't know if it was going to make it. And I carried it carefully and kind of put it in a little planter I had so he could kind of recover there. I kept the cats inside. Anyway, and so after a while, and I kind of gave him some water and everything, he just he took off. And it was just so thrilling. And so it kind of gave me a wonderful lesson myself. So this is called Angel Scent. My name is Jill Harden, by the way. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce you to myself. Little yellow warbler, angel in disguise, you've come to me to show me how it is that I have not been wise. Oh, little yellow warbler, you were stunned, paralyzed, feet nor legs gave way to wings. Your song was trembling inside. For me, it is. Now I see, I too am paralyzed by fright of having legs that will not overcome disease, demise, and having sung my soul before, then having said no more, will I, to comfort one whom I adore, lest he disappear. Now my life feels like a lie, and such a chore to nurture, unless I let my voice again, the songs I love to bring, on legs of wind, my wings to soar the waves of feeling in this world, while in this body whirling. Yes, the life I truly have beckons me to leap, as you, little warbler, flew back to knowing deep your lot, while dropping fast and clean all of what your fear had thought. Thank you, dear sweet angel bird. Your silent message came so clear as soon as my own fear was seen reflected in your mirror. So, here I ask direction, please. Make it clear perpetually. Appear for me. Make me see the truth I must obey, that I cannot, will not even think I could ever more betray. Really short one. No. Right? No. Well, it was a fun one.
I'm Sandy Lizzett from Corvallis. Mine happens to be about birds too. In China, 1958, as part of the Great Leap Forward, the campaign to preserve grain by destroying pests, 4 million sparrows were killed. And then 2 years later, the locusts came and killed 30 million people. My husband, I know that because my husband and I watch these teaching company videos in the wintertime. And what I've written is not an ekphrastic poem, but I'm trying to develop my own picture through the poem. And it's called They Fell Like Rain. A people's farm collective in a country rich with jade is the setting for this picture, an unsettling act of war. A multitude of peasants who are absent from the scene
toil endlessly in umber fields, tilling, hoeing, picking, packing, bags of treasure, sacks of precious rice. In the background of this painting, strung across the scene, tree-sized heaps resembling hills or lifeless lumps of clay. With deft, exquisite brushstrokes, hues of blue and black, the artist has depicted hills of dead and dying birds. The children in the foreground, armed with dim gray pots and pans, caught clanging, banging, running wildly in a screaming frenzy, screeching frenzy, chasing sparrows, baking eggs, destroying pests for Chairman Mao. Pigtails drooping, one small child looks out from darkly solemn eyes. With hands outstretched, her body bent above that of a dying bird. But on her shoulder, firmly planted, older brother's grim command. Continue with the task.
To thank those who worked to put the anthology together, I would like to read this poem. My name is Christy Kramer. I was born in northern Idaho, lived a great deal of my life here in Oregon. Every Tuesday morning when I went to school in McMinnville, I spent on the Salmon River estuary. And now I live in Vancouver, BC, and half the time in my very isolated mountain home in Idaho. This was written in Vancouver, and one of the lovely things that happens there with poetry is there's often an invitation for poets to come and write new art exhibits. And this happened in that space. And then there were many collaborations with this poem and poems in that context. Alley fragment and name. Pull a fortune from the alley, card of wisdom reversed or blessed, corrugated cardboard alley, say painted red. A river of alley where window of light, window shades drawn, slick spill of pollen and milk, and this is neighborhood drawn by alley. Someone wrote a message, rolled it, slid it into a bottle, sealed it, tossed it into the alley, so the winds and current might lift it away. Shadow alley, wild electric sizzle, touch with the eye alley. Peel back the walls of the house, exposed beam, night sky, negative space. Touch alley of bolt and screw, touch steel, acrylic orange. Dance in the alley, why not? Head touch the ground, broken alley pours out light. Here in the narrow of grape and pale, corner of copper patched over, pipe of echo, aluminum, hollow to sky alley, darker palette of rain. Do you remember where you placed that dab of yellow? Spackle alley, rubbed smooth, made rough, pull fingers free from gloves, touch. Uncork the message, run nail along wax, waft of whiskey and whimsy crack. Perhaps it is a love letter to alley, perhaps answer to our prayer. What is endless? This room is alley, so is your heart.
That was really nice. And it seems like this anthology is a real treat too. Kathy's writing, so can't wait to get a copy of it. I'm Jenny Root. I live in Eugene. Poem. It's called Butterflies, 1972. Bye bye, Miss American Pie. Two girls, 7 and 5, sing along in a Chevy Suburban, driving with their parents down the back roads of a country fading behind them. They wonder about the levee and the rye, but they keep up with the good old boys. Pink carnation and a pickup truck for the pink clink and fun spunk of it. leaning out the backseat windows, loose hair flaring like the 4th of July. This isn't the day the music died, this interminable scorcher boring through cornfields south of Detroit. The family's on a camping trip, heading toward the spine of I-75. The father and mother not saying much. The jesters sang for the king and queen. Their father glares at them for singing, and their mother turns around, puts on a smile and says, "Stop now, girls, let's play the water tower game." Standard Oil on the horizon, Mobil out there above the trees. Do you recall what was revealed? The jesters on the sidelines when the song comes on the radio again. Not a song the girls understand, but they go on singing about angels in hell through the flatlands east of Mississippi, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3, before thunder and their father threatens to stop the car this time. I mean it. I met a girl who sang blues. The girls hum softly to themselves because they can't forget the song about music and dying. And when the car stops for the night and their mom sets up camp while their dad stalks off to be alone, the sisters peer at the radiator and see the butterflies, splayed perfect and dead, the air humid, buzzing with locusts.
Nancy Hager from Bend. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. This is 6 lines, but it's actually 2 haikus. May I please read both of them? 6 lines.
Shall we let her?
Yes. Yes.
My bird poems. The first one, I was finishing acupuncture school and I was staying in the northern part of the Olympic Peninsula and swim. And this happened out on the field where I was sitting. A robin lands, rests on my hand, our softness fits. And the second one is, I've been studying with a shaman and spent 7 years with her, and I was in Rapid City, South Dakota, and ready to leave. And the blizzard came and filled everything with snow that lasted for the blizzard lasted 3 days. And when it was finally stopped, and I got up that morning and it was time to get in my car and leave, and the streets had just barely been cleared, and the snow was beautiful. And this is what happened. As I drove through the streets of Rapid City and out onto the interstate. An eagle flies beside me, eyeball to eyeball, quiet snow.
Been such a rich workshop and set of readings. I'm so thrilled to be here and meet a number of you, learn from you. If any of you are interested in pursuing a PhD related to poetry, I would be happy to talk with you. I happen to be a faculty member at 2 alternative accredited universities, both of which offer a PhD related to creative writing. So chat with me. I'm Carol Barrett. I live in Bend, Oregon. I can live anywhere in the country and do this work, and my students live all over the place. I decided I would read a poem inspired by one of my students' work. Can you hear me okay? Good. My daughter's father is Native American, but despite having been with him for many years, I was not aware of the Native American push to have their bones returned to the reservation. I just was oblivious. Went to museums, noticed the Indian bones, took it in, and really was not in touch with what has happened, the decimation of graves of the first Americans here. So her work was about the return of native bones to the tribes. And this is a poem that came from that. Skating with our daughter on Veterans Day. He was born from soil beneath this ice, clay red with tears, the names of tribes calling now as I watch his broken back. Winnebago, Hopi, Sioux. Witness, we broke his back in where the boys skated on mud. He could not keep them from falling. He pinned tags on their stiff toes and sent them home. At least the bones went back. We broke his back in Nam, and before that, we broke it. I watch his stooped ghost travel this ice, racing his brothers across their backyard river, his grandfather's black hair trailing the Mississippi. I am here to witness. At least the bones went back. Not always so. Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, bones shipped in small white parcels to stone museums, artifacts, we call them, leather, flint, bone. The severed hands of his fathers, now in Paris, feet in Munich, ribs scattered to Rio de Janeiro and Rome. They are calling in the bones, Chinook, Cheyenne, Santee, assembling the teeth, the wrists of his people, returning the dead beneath the ice, raising them high above the snow in the rattled air of ravens, so souls can rest. His grandfather, his mother, all the mothers. Smoke rises, Maka, Iroquois, Shawnee, new fires by old ice, old bones. In the capital city, the nations weep, calling for clavicle, hip bone, skull. Bones in the Smithsonian still haunt their graves. Federal skeletons exempt from law, Pawnee, Delaware, Osage, no release. My daughter's small bones on skates make tiny drums on the ice. Yakima, Penobscot, Creek. Her father glides toward me, back rising, long hair clinging to his face, lifts her into the net of my bones.
You can all come closer if you like.
I'm Tim Witzel. I live in a valley northeast of Springfield. But I guess my poetry group is Eugene. How's that?
That's
Yeah,
right.
good for the video too. It's over there.
I'm going to read a love poem. It starts out with a reminder that May wasn't always quite like this. In fact, even last year. And the only other thing that has to be explained, there's the word gastos in here. In Spanish it means expenses. It can also mean waste. And there's a reference to love apples, which is tomatoes. How I see you canning tomatoes. Early May rain spills from the gutter. I cue up a sapphire tango, clean my desk drawer to the strum of water. For weeks I've been moving too much for much to reach me. Cloverleaf, potholed aprons, indoor putt-putt birthday. Solitary track meet, no ribbons. I admonish the sky for nourishing moss in this month of iris. I speak roughly to the Argentine playing bandoneon behind my head, decry his worn socks and bare Achilles tendon. His cologne brindles with sweat, hors d'oeuvres to River Plate amour, those damn gastos. The guitarist furrows a black unibrow in torrid pique. I proffer a brilliant coffee mug to the downpour, V8 slime on a chipped grin. Screws, caps, and idle dividend from Recreational Equipment Incorporated. Blank product registrations. And this note, making love, apples last, pen to a 3x5 in the heat of late August. Cherokee purple, brandywine, Oregon spring, a new summer rises fragile in 4-inch pots. I fashioned a stiff collar from my belt, rosettes from my abandoned socks. Woman, bring me your black unibrow. There's a furrow to plumb with blue song.
This is another Frasty poem. I'm Marsha Casey. I live in Seal Rock. This came about when a life drawing class invited the poets to come and write, and the drawings and the writings were easily together. The epigraph to this comes from Matthew Shinoda. This is what we do when we do what we are. Studio, body incommunicado. 1. Convening. We shed all coats, conceits, connections, the usual tangles at the door. Here we enter the spare studio, its single endeavor, fuse, lit, transfixing, beholder, beheld. 2. Conundrum. His inwardness centers us, pegged as human by the clench in the crux of his brow. The model yet stands forth as object, sans person. We too seed ourselves, find ourselves gathered in the remote cosmos of his face. 3. Scope. We pore over arc, tick, knuckle, this structure of reach, twist, angle, and splay, which turns on some unseen axis. In each between us, shadow and sheen are tenderly rendered. Seer and seen, we school ourselves in being, a thing in
Horizon. I'm local. This is from a collection of surfing poetry that I've worked on for years. And it's inspired by a phrase that's come out of Washington, D.C. lately called American exceptionalism. I keep changing the name of this poem. Today it's Evolve Now. If they can put a man on the moon, no. If they can put mouse genes in strawberries, why do I have to wear this wetsuit? I'm not saying I don't have gratitude for the damn thing. It's allowed me some joy I'd surely have missed in chilly climes. But even the best are straitjackets, energy-sucking second skins as slowing as extra gravity, pulling surfers down like full-body galoshes. Who wants to ride in molasses? So how about a little pill instead? A little gene-altering lozenge to help us out when we want some cold water fun. Just a temporary fix is all I ask. A synthetic hormone dooba for a couple hours of warming relief. Something to keep the cold out by swelling the subcutaneous cells beneath our skins into a sort of happy human blubber. Not too thick. Just a few mil to wall out the winter. Wouldn't have to be permanent. No need here to buy bigger clothes. Perhaps engineered for a 2-hour session. Followed by a small, swift reduction, 15 minutes and back to shore size. In the water from ocean to auto. Of course, the magazines wouldn't like it much. Current skinny surf heroes looking a bit frumpy in the photos. Less lean and mean than seal-like smooth boys, and a tough sell to the women no desire to appear as so much bikini-clad sausage. The wetsuit manufacturers would howl like buggy whip salesmen when the horseless carriage came in. But we all love progress, and while we're at it, how about a little something to improve lung capacity and lower heart rate, an improved mammalian diving reflex pill for those long, dark tumbles in the impact zone, an end to lung-bursting uncertainty below. Madison Avenue would have some fun here. Sub-Q and polar bear and genetisuit and marine jeans and cell overallers and surfer skin and expand-a-lung and oxygen and subsurfer and breathe long and surf gills and dive deep and give 'em air. But why stop there? I could use wider feet and longer too, something more like flippers. And how about some finger webbing and longer fingers while we're at it? To get some speed out on the briny. How about some dope to fuse our legs into great temporary humongous tails and zip us out there to charge the big ones? Wouldn't even need a board at all, even at Jaws or Mav or Cortez Bank. Forget tow-in jet skis and rescue craft. We'd be out there in hurricanes, riding 100-foot faces, banking down the biggest barrels, hot-dogging in the heaviest hooks, blowing the minds of startled roughnecks out on storm-battered Texas towers, or screaming past storm-tossed supertankers while riding rolling watery mountains as they marched across the heaving horizon and racing down massive pitching peaks past wallowing cruise ships with throngs of head-lolling tourists puking in disbelief. Listen, we'd be out in every condition, wilding among the wild waves upon all those 7 seas. And after the sessions, when we were like normal, as normal as surfers are on land, ever, with legs and stuff, all happy and tired, as only the hardcore could be. We'd go somewhere warm and get a brewski and talk and talk and talk about it. Thank you. Such a hardcore audience. I mean, you guys are
This is a food poem called Fish on Friday. The bones terrified us. We had heard the stories. The child took a bite of fish, swallowed, and the fish bones, like flexible toothpicks, lodged in his throat. Tiny hammocks for that eternal rest. Our mother served us fish every Friday, year-round. Whitefish, 3 bones per bite, 30 bones per meal. We laid the little white needles of death on the plate's rim, each bone a tally of disaster averted. February brought Candlemas and the blessing of candles. The next day, the Feast of St. Blaise, before school, we knelt at the communion rail for the blessing of our Friday fish-eating throats. A mother had brought to St. Blaise and laid at his feet her only child, choking to death on a fish bone stuck in his throat. Though on his way to prison and his own beheading, Blaise said a prayer, and straightway the child was saved. At the communion rail, the priest pressed against our necks 2 candles tied by a ribbon into a V, and said under his breath a prayer that we be spared the fate that seemed all too likely, but for the intercession of St. Blaise. Each Friday at dinner, we stared at the fish, spiked with bones, crumbled it, and carried to our lips forkfuls of perhaps our last meal, mindful of the choking children of the world and the absence of saints passing by on their way to prison and their beheading.
Anybody else planning to lead, please? One over there, 2.
There's one over there, too, Kelly.
Okay. Who's starting?
Bruce Barton. This is called sidekicks. Sidekicks are sometimes referred to as second bananas, high on the bunch but never on top, unaccustomed to being right at first picking. Always riding shotgun, these perennial passengers sporting only one-way tickets home lack whatever it takes to put them in the driver's seat. Having no identity except as spoils for heroes, they become cultural co-stars forever, transfixed in our minds as character actors in simplicity's prescriptive revelation. Sidekicks, someone at our side, there when we need them, to have kicks with, to kick when there's no one else, a substitute for our missing part that grants permission. The sidekick argues occasionally, but goes along, always. Where would the great leaders be without their sidekicks? Who would they experiment on during their formative years? Who else could teach them they exist to be followed? Sidekicks rarely kick back. When they do, they feel guilty. They know better. They would never be bold enough to lead for long. Leaders don't feel guilty and always want to lead. Sidekicks want the thrill of being close to the action, but are afraid to instigate anything themselves. Trying too hard might give them prominence and ruin their supporting role. Some sidekicks learn to lead by exploiting a moment, grabbing unattended reins, breaking with tradition. Soon, this unnatural state of daring overwhelms them, and they regress to their unoriginal selves. It is hard to say what makes a sidekick tick. true humbleness in the face of pervading vanity, fear of attempting, of achieving, of failing, inability to activate wings while pursuing dreams. Still, obsessive caution reveals wise souls, braving the unknown in spite of themselves, commenting with journalistic toughness and poetic perspective on their unsolicited adventures. Thus, the classic sidekick prototypes must be those two caballeros of differing temperaments, Tanto and Pancho, denied the company of women as they ride into the sunset with their buddies, side by side, but never ahead.
I'm Cynthia Jacoby from Newport, and I get a lot of prompts from old family photos. This is one. Photo at Silver Lake, 1947. Though they had already lived a lifetime, here they smile, young and fresh. He, returned by sheer luck from Anzio. She, nursing in veterans' memorial wards. My uncle in tall slouch hat, one eye shaded, his legs so long his crotch was at her waist. My aunt, gazing up, wavy hair flipped back on one side like Lauren Bacall, in shorts and saddle Oxfords, left knee bent, looking saucy, one foot half out of her shoe. Hefting brown bottles of cold Schlitz, they lean into each other. They adore. I know now what they could not. I know of their life well lived with candles at dusk, of a marriage ended with his death, preceded by strokes and marathon rehabs. If effort were all, he could have raced with Kenyans. I know about her, miscarriage after miscarriage, of how she delivered one bloody little inchling into the toilet and how she saved it for the priest. I know for both the joy at last of a healthy son. I know of her final years, blind and near death. She talked to him every day, but couldn't say his name.
I'm Dick Cameron from Depot Bay. This is just called How to Be a Poet number 3. Stare at a blank page. See what whiteness stares back. Listen to dead silence. Be dumb. Shut your eyes tight. Study closure. Be numb. Feel empty. Taste hunger. Feed on it. Open your eyes. Take up your pen. Write words and lines. Think what to say. Use some poetic tricks like rhyme and metaphor. Seem significant but paradoxically plain. Read aloud, rolling the words upon your tongue. Be profound. Wait for everyone to be moved.
I'm going to try and do this. This is a poem that I have in my head, unless it disappears because you're here. But I'll try. If you ever saw the movie Groundhog Day, it's a little like that. Called The Dog Died on a Daily Basis. One day it died, and then the next day it died again. On the days that it didn't die, those were the days left for mourning. But there wasn't a lot of time left for mourning. There was always a new death. After a while, the babies started dying as well. Dog death and baby death. And then came the leaving of lovers. They came just to leave, they left you, and then the next day they left you again. It was a kind of a daily rape. It was a kind of a daily hell. I don't know what you did to deserve it, but you must have done something exquisite. It was always the same dog. It was always the same baby. It was always the same, got it wrong. It was always the same lover. It was always the same dog. It was always the same baby. You can abort it again and again and again, but the baby comes back. It is always the same baby. The soul, so they say, never dies.